JoJo's Part 1, Phantom Blood, is a good part, but it's often seen as the worst. This is how Phantom Blood could have been better. Starting off, the main character, Jonathan Joestar. He was a good character. I really liked his character design, how he was good and nice, was determined. However, I feel like his character was a little bit too generic and bland. He should have had a little bit more of his own unique personality or unique traits. Since he just felt like he was a completely nice person and didn't have any evil in him, they should have maybe made him more intelligent, for example, as that would have made him more interesting or made him more unique. A lot of the time during, let's say, episode 5 to 7, Jonathan is a good character, but it can be a little boring because he's just not that interesting compared to some other main JoJo characters we have in other parts. The next problem, I would say, is the length of the part. It's only 9 episodes. I feel it didn't give us enough because I really like Dio, and I would have wanted to see more of him and more of a build up to their final fight, more crazy things happening. And also, William Zeppeli literally died within like 3 episodes of him being introduced. That's just how short the part was. It's like you didn't even feel very sad because he died so soon. It just feels kind of weird how fast he died. Because of how short the part is, it doesn't allow you to be as emotionally connected or as attached to the characters and what's going on. I think it should have been at least, let's say, 12 episodes long since it was only 9. Next is, I would say, the side villains other than Dio is a big problem. None of them were really that good. There was one I could think of that was decent. However, the others just seemed like vampires who were very generic, nothing that interesting about them, and they didn't seem that cool. So I would say if they had better side villains, that would make the part a lot better. Having villains that have cooler powers and better personalities that aren't just brutes who are angry and want to attack Jonathan. I also just thought a lot of the character designs for the side villains weren't that good and didn't make them look that cool. Side villains play a big role into what makes a JoJo part good, like we see in all the other JoJo's parts. But it felt that Dio was really the only great villain in the part. And it really feels like Dio carried the entire part, at least for me, mostly. I want to go back to Jonathan and also the length of this part though. Jonathan was nowhere near as cool as someone like Joseph Joestar or Jotaro, and he didn't have as unique and as exciting of a personality as Joseph for sure. He was not as charismatic, so they should have given him some more traits like that as well, or even made him more intelligent like I mentioned before. But also, the length of the part affected how good of a main character Jonathan was as well, because we didn't get to see as much from him and more about him more in depth. I feel like there should have been more episodes and just a lot more of them hunting down vampires that Dio's sending after them, but who have cooler powers, who have better character designs, and just side villains that have cooler gimmicks and more in-depth personalities that are unique to them, like we've seen in all the other JoJo's parts. Part 1 definitely has the worst side villains, and I would also say it has the worst main character, which is Jonathan. I would also say that the pacing is a little bit off. In the beginning, it seems really fast, and time's going by really fast from episode 1 to episode 3, but then after that, it feels like things are going a lot slower and not as much is happening, and that's fine, but at least they should have more intense and amazing fights or a fascinating adventure. Because if we compare their side villains to the side villains, let's say from JoJo's Part 2, and JoJo's Part 2 doesn't have that many side villains, but let's say for example Straight So is better than every single side villain in JoJo's Part 1. Straight So was cool. Straight So had a good character design. He had an interesting personality. He wasn't just some generic and bland vampire. This is what I've always thought about JoJo's Part 1. The beginning is really good, which is episodes 1, 2, and 3, and the end is really good. So let's say episodes 7, 8, and 9. However, the middle, which is 4, 5, and 6 of the part, it's not very good. Those 3 episodes are a little bit boring, and it's due to the fact that nothing that unique or that cool is really happening. There's no characters that are that interesting being introduced, and even the fights Jonathan's having with the side villains aren't really that good. That's one more thing that holds JoJo's Part 1 back a lot. The fights. It also has the worst fights out of any part. So I definitely feel this part could have been better. And I feel it would actually been pretty easy to make the part better. Just make it a little bit longer and make it have better side villains. Even if Jonathan wasn't a perfect main character and was kind of generic, it wasn't a big deal. They just needed a more interesting adventure that he was going on with William Zeppeli and Speedwagon, instead of it just being so short and them going up against some generic and bland side villains and then having long dragged out encounters and fights against them that aren't even very interesting or entertaining. Maybe if they had made it more of like a Apocalypse, or like more reckless when he would go and fight them, and he would be like having the vampires charge him, and then he would be like exploding things or having a brawl with the vampires, it would just be better. Just go more in depth with the side villains, show more of their character, give them more of a character, show maybe a little bit of their story or what exactly their gimmick is, go more in depth on their gimmicks, and just make them more connected to what's going on in the story, or showing their life a little bit before they were a vampire and what exactly they're like now as a vampire. Giving all the vampires, you know, slightly different powers, making some stronger than others, making some have like the ability to fly, and then others are super strong, and then some of the other ones are really intelligent. Let us see some of the vampires like taking out innocent bystanders and like drinking people's blood, because stuff like this would have been interesting and it would have been crazy. I would say just make it more like Part 2 and Part 3. That could help it a lot. Other than that though, Part 1 was a good part, but it's very understandable why a lot of people think Part 1's the worst part. I personally don't think it's the worst part. Well, technically, I guess I do think it's the worst part, but it's not my least favorite part. I guess from a writing standpoint though, it is the worst part though, but just based on how much I like it, it's not the worst part for me. Even looking back at it now, I'm very surprised how they made the part so short. I understand they just want to do a quick introduction. They want to like maybe make people bored and stop watching JoJo's. But I just feel there was a lot of things they could have so easily fixed to make the part better. And it would have been fine if it was a little bit longer. Like, let's say, like I mentioned before, 12 episodes. Because I found the first 3 episodes really good. And I would say the first 3 episodes of this part were definitely the best episodes in the part. If they had continued with episodes this good, this part could have easily been one of the best. But after episode 3, the episodes definitely weren't as good. And I guess the last thing they could have done is just made more episodes and just showed Dio more. Because why not? I love Dio and I would have wanted to see more of him in Part 1. Maybe they didn't want to drag anything out, but I feel like it could have actually just made the part better. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is Part 1 the worst part? What do you think they could have changed to make the part better? What do you think they could have done? Do you agree with me or not? And I'll see you in the next video.